Hello, and welcome to another FAQ Monday. I am your host, Fluff, and today we have a lot to cover. I need the dishes done, I need the house painted, car washed. Probably need to go get groceries too, guys. So who wants to grab a brush? Finish up that that red spot in my studio that everyone's been bugging me about lately. Anybody? We'll come back to this. First question, what's the best way to get good cleans on the cheap? You didn't mention your specific situation, whether it's recording or live, but a good solid state is a great way to get really good cleans on the cheap. The orange CR120 comes to mind. The Roland JC120 is a legendary clean amp. Most solid state amps have really good cleans. I mean, that's what they do well. That's why bass amps are a lot of the times solid state and they sound great. It's the high gain stuff that's harder to replicate with solid state stuff, but definitely look for a good solid state amp. In the digital world, amp sims, man, amp sims are the best cleans. I mean, for the last two Rest Repose records, that's all I've used for clean tones is the built-in Logic amp sims right in the DAW with just a little bit of processing. I mean, you have obviously the entire tonal world at your fingertips with a plug-in. Not necessarily so with the amplifier, the solid state amp, but still, either one of those two options is fairly inexpensive just by default and really good sounding for cleans. Have you ever compared the Mesa Boogie Vintage 30s to the regular Celestion version? What's your opinion on that? I have been able to compare them in person, not officially on video, and there are many different versions of the V30, but when Tony had his orange 212 cab with Chinese vintage 30s, I was able to compare that with my Mesa Boogie 212 vintage 30 cab, and they do definitely sound pretty different, especially in the upper mids and the high end. Now, before we go any further, vintage 30s sound great. Vintage 30s also don't sound their full potential until they've been extremely broken in. Vintage 30s have a certain tonal flavor that anyone in the hard rock or metal community just kind of gravitates towards. I mean, they are the gold standard for anything using any amount of distortion. They're a great speaker. There's been, I think, 4 or 5 different Celestions. There's the original Celestion Vintage 30 that came out in the late 80s. There has been obviously the Chinese version. There was the Mesa Boogie Vintage 30, which is basically the English made to the old spec, which is very close to the original spec. There's a couple of other ones too over the years, but Celestion insists they sound totally the same and they're the exact same thing. And unfortunately they're not. The main differences that I noticed in person was the Chinese vintage 30s had some real nasty, spiky, high-end fizz. Like they were quite harsh, versus the Mesa vintage 30s were much smoother. And that was pretty apparent right away when Tony used the same rectifier and plugged into his orange 212 and was like, yo, that's not even the same. I thought these were the same speakers. And he actually thought they were different speakers in the cab. So, you know, be that as it may, maybe I'll test that one day on the channel using like a Dynamount. So the robotic mic is the exact same spot. Maybe I might try to source some or something. I don't know, that might take some time, but maybe at least some Chinese versus Mesa vintage 30s. Mesa vintage 30s are my favorite vintage 30s, but yeah, maybe we'll get to try to test that here pretty soon. What process do you use for picking amps to use for clients when you reamp DI tracks? The process is usually the same. First, I'll want to know what tone the client has in their head. I will ask them for a few example albums just to kind of get in the ballpark. So if they give me, you know, an old Killswitch Engage record or something like that, I know, you know, it's a 5150-ish tone, 5150 rectifier, something in that vein. Now, if they're going for something like, I don't know, an old Chimera record that was made using a PVJSX and a crank rev, Maybe I'll go for a little modern, I'll go for the Rev or something like that. So it just depends on the bass tone that they're kind of going for, because everyone has a kind of tone they have in their head already before they even reach out to you. So I'll do that. Then I will kind of talk through it with them a little bit. And then I will usually do a couple of test tracks and send them to the client and ask, what do you like? Which one do you like? Which one am I gonna spend the most time on reamping? So go ahead and pick one. You know, maybe they'll have 2 or 3 different amps. And you get to pick one, and then I go nuts and reamping a bunch of tracks, and you get back a folder of goodness. And generally speaking, I can usually nail it or improve upon something that they initially have in their head and kind of make it their own, because really that's what you kind of want to do with a reamping gig like that. You don't really want to, you're not really trying to replicate someone else's exact tone. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know. But generally speaking, they want their own voice and they want their own kind of tonality. So that's what you also want to help them achieve as well. And now Fluff reads a tweet. If you go to jail for tax evasion, you're living off of taxes as a result of not paying taxes. My suggestion to you this week is to check out the newly released Destiny 2. This game is awesome, and I've been playing it nonstop. And I got to, as you'll see tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, I actually got to go to the PAX West convention in Seattle, and I've vlogged the whole thing. And we actually got to play some Destiny 2 beta right before it came out. Now, as of this airing, it's been out for a few days, but as of this filming, it just came out yesterday. And I'm already at like level 11. And yeah, I'm on Xbox. Come and find me. You want to hang out, maybe play some Destiny, maybe get a clan going. I don't know. But yeah, it's just another week. Destiny 2, awesome, awesome video game. I'll put my links down below in the description. You've been wonderful. I have been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.